is Alex Minsoulis, and I work at Logic Artists. We're a game studio in Copenhagen, Denmark, and we are currently making Expeditions Viking. This is our Viking-themed RPG. Expeditions Viking is a historical-themed RPG, so the idea is that we try to represent the historical environment as true as we sort of can, while still allowing players the freedom that an RPG should allow. So while it is a historical environment, it is not like perfectly historically accurate. We try to go for authenticity instead. And the reason is because then you can actually change history, right? So the idea is from this point in history that you begin the game, which is sort of at the dawn of the Viking Age, then we know how the Vikings sort of tore their way into history, but we want to allow you as a player to sort of carve out your own truth, your own history in that sort of sense. So instead of the famous names of the Viking sagas, perhaps your name will be written into the sagas instead. You start off as the Thane of a small, very modest Viking village. Your father, who was the Thane before you, has died on a raid across the sea here in England. The game's broken down into two scenarios, or to two campaigns. The first is a Danish campaign where you amass your wealth and strength so that you can go on a raid, and then the second takes place here in England, in Northumbria, and in sort of the Pict region of Scotland. And basically you have to decide between which of those factions you'd like to side with, or perhaps you want to side with your own self and sort of try to install some sort of Danelaw, as it were. So what we try to do with the dialogue system is give people that freedom of choice. That's sort of one of the ways that we express that in the game is through the dialogue system. So yeah, you've got lots of different options, and some of them are based on skill checks, that sort of thing. Basically, the way that you build your character and the way you decide to play them, the sort of choices that you make are going to influence events that happen throughout the game as well. For example, if you want to raid a monastery and slaughter a bunch of people there, then perhaps the nearby villages won't take as kindly to you. It'll be hard to establish a trade route with the people in the area. However, if you wanted to be a bit more sort of trade savvy, as the Vikings were, they weren't just sort of violent pillagers, they also were smart and savvy traders, then you can try and establish those types of things to help benefit you back in the Norseland where you're sort of still vying for strength and control.
New York, cheesecake, hot fudge, Sunday.
My name is John Gibson. I'm the president of Tripwire Interactive, and I'm here showing off Killing Floor Incursion VR. It is pretty far in its development cycle. We are about at the alpha development point in the game's life cycle. So, but we're moving on to the release. I mean, the gunplay is awesome, but I'm really excited for people to play a shooter that is not just an arcade game or a 1-hour experience. I'm excited for people to get to play a VR game that is a shooter that has a full campaign. It can be played by yourself or it can be played with a friend in co-op, and there's a story here. So you're not just mindlessly shooting things, you're actually doing some adventuring, solving puzzles, and doing a lot of shooting, and finding more about the Killing Floor universe.
Ice cream, treat, pudding.
My name's Toby Ellis. I work for Antimatter Games. We are a studio in the West Country, down in Cornwall. We are making Rising Storm 2, which is the sequel to PC Gamer's Multiplayer Game of the Year in 2013. It's an asymmetric war shooter. Okay, so with this game we've really sort of doubled down on the asymmetric gameplay. Rising Storm 1 and Red Orchestra 2 before it, you had different abilities for each of the armies. The Japanese had that incredible banzai charge where, you'd get 31 of your friends together and you'd all sprint out. Now we've got things like we're bringing helicopters into the mix, we're bringing massively different armies. The Vietnam settings really allowed us to play with that asymmetry in a way that it's been very, very interesting from like a balance perspective, because how do you create one of the most well-funded and well-armed armies in all of history and then create a game which is balanced so that it's fair? The US, obviously, they've got helicopters, they've got gunships, they've got all of these huge instruments of war. And the Vietnamese, they have traps and guile and wit and stealth. And They can dig tunnels and hit you from anywhere. So that's kind of where we're going. We've taken the setting of Vietnam and really made it inform the game design decisions that we've made.
I am Thomas, I am from the Netherlands. I am making Caromble, which is a 21st century brick breaking game. So Caromble is a brick breaker, yeah? It's like the old breakout, you have your ball, you have your pedal, you knock over bricks. We all started on this 7 years ago when we were a bunch of computer science students, and we got together, we said, yeah, we're gonna make games, we're gonna make a game engine, and we need to make a game. So we thought, well, let's take Breakout, let's make it 3D, we can finish it quickly, in half a year tops, we can get it out there, we'll be game developers, we know how it feels, and we can go from there. But that's 7 years ago, because once we started doing that, we really got into the genre, and we really found there's lots of things that just hadn't been done with it. And we sort of had a love affair, if you will, with the genre, and we discovered all these things like platform levels, and there's puzzle elements where you have to get the right combination of switches to go forward. And there's just so much to add that we just kind of kept adding and adding and adding. Of course, for speed it also doesn't help that we only work on a game for 1 day a week. We all have day jobs that actually do pay. And then we work on the game for 1 day on Friday, and that actually doesn't pay all that much. So we kind of have the day jobs to pay for the game development, and it's good because you get to work on the game and it's nice, and it's bad because game development becomes really slow. It's gonna be a PC game, mainly because we made our own game engine, and it's technically like impossible for us to port it to consoles. Well, you could definitely do it in a console world, it's just a time matter. It will take us a couple of years to port the game to the consoles. And before we put out any effort like that, it has to prove itself on the PC first. In the future, I think that might change. I think it already has changed. We're kind of one of the last remainders of the old guard that created their own engines. Nobody does that anymore. Hardly anybody does it. Everybody uses Unity or Unreal. And those engines, they just give you pretty much out of the box support for all the platforms and all the consoles. So I think we will have a lot more cross-platform releases in the future, definitely.